People do not just review their will for no reason. It is not the kind of thing you decide to do on some random Tuesday afternoon. You only look at a will when something forces your hand. Maybe a health scare, a bad breakup, or sudden anxiety about how your estate gets split up if the worst should happen. When someone suddenly demands to see their estate planning documents, there is always a motive. Always. Rumor has it Nancy Guthrie asked to see her will just days before she vanished without a trace. For detectives, the timing of that request is a chilling detail in her life's final chapter. This is not about some forensic evidence. It is not a physical weapon or a recovered text message. It was a deliberate choice by Nancy, a real action she took. And across a 5-month murder investigation, forensic financial analysis becomes the ultimate key. This connects the signed document, the items unearthed in the backyard, and her communication logs. That decision carries a weight that investigators cannot ignore. Let us break down why the timing of a will revision matters so much in a homicide. Estate planning documents, family trusts, and beneficiary designations are never updated on a whim, without a very good reason. Most people sign their last will and do not look at it for decades. They just forget about it. It sits locked away with a lawyer or in a safe deposit box, untouched, until life forces them to pull it out. The motives for revising a will typically fall into a few very clear categories. We are talking about failing health, scheduled surgeries, or a toxic breakdown in a relationship with a chosen heir. Another trigger is a sudden romance that completely alters the line of succession. Or perhaps, suspecting someone is pulling the strings to steal your assets, sparking an urgent desire to disinherit them completely. Every single one of these scenarios holds massive forensic value in a missing persons case. Each path suggests Nancy was weighing the fate of her fortune against one dark certainty: her own impending death. The question keeping detectives awake is simple. What forced her to demand that document just days before vanishing? And here is the puzzle piece that connects this clue to the rest of the case. It is impossible to ignore. The police had already flagged this exact link through forensic financial tracking. Unearthing that signed document suggests her inheritance and real estate were the ultimate motive for this crime. Inside Annie Guthrie's home, investigators discovered a signed document regarding properties tied directly to Nancy. Looking at the dates and legal terms, they believe this paper explains the victim's grim, tragic fate. We now know that, during her final days alive, Nancy Guthrie was strangely active. Nancy herself was actively taking steps to review her will. Those two facts, a paper about Nancy's assets at Annie's house, and Nancy reviewing her inheritance, are no coincidence. They are woven together in a way that tells a deeply disturbing story. If Nancy was reviewing her will out of fear regarding her named heirs, that detail changes everything. If someone was squeezing her for cash, her sudden review and that document in Annie's house are two sides of the same coin. Nancy felt something was deeply wrong with her estate, even as a document formalizing those assets had already reached Annie's hands. That coincidence is a critical turning point. This crossover of information is one of the strongest leads detectives are chasing right now. Let us look at how a client actually reviews a will, because that process reveals the investigator's entire strategy. Requesting your will means contacting the lawyer who drafted it or retrieving it from wherever it lies hidden. That point of contact, starting with a phone call to the firm, becomes absolutely vital. The email requesting an appointment and the physical office visit leave a paper trail that cannot be erased. Call logs, emails, and the firm's reception books reveal whether Nancy physically stepped into her lawyer's office. If she called, phone records would prove it, and detectives have already dissected every single communication. They tracked calls, emails, and calendar dates to reconstruct with pinpoint accuracy when and how Nancy made her move. The ultimate goal was to lock down a precise timeline. They investigated her initial contact, whether she had voiced fears about her assets, and if she confided in anyone. They also looked into whether her mood or behavior shifted dramatically after she laid eyes on that paper. If she wanted to verify her will, it was likely because she uncovered something that deeply terrified her. Maybe it all started at a family gathering, or perhaps during a routine phone call. Or maybe a casual comment from someone close made her want to confirm her will still read the way she remembered. Nobody reviews a will out of sheer boredom. They do it because something very specific triggered a doubt. Investigators had already found a signed document, held by a third party, outlining Nancy's properties and assets. The suspicion that drove Nancy to check her papers was no simple hunch. It must have been something highly specific, like a passing rumor she overheard, or something told directly to her face. Perhaps she noticed a sudden shift in the people around her, prompting her to look at the original document herself to verify her wishes. If that is true, Then Nancy Guthrie did not just sit idly by in the days leading up to her disappearance. She was quietly digging, with the cautious discretion of someone who does not yet realize what they are up against, hunting down papers, checking records, trying to figure out if her growing fears were actually based on reality. And apparently, someone decided that she was getting far too close to the truth. The conflicting family stories are where the tensions mentioned by our midnight source become impossible to ignore. When investigators questioned the family about those critical moments leading up to Nancy's disappearance, they reportedly received conflicting accounts and wildly different versions of what was said in those final conversations. Conflicting stories emerged about her mood and mental state, alongside arguments over who actually spoke with her and what they discussed before she vanished. Under the cold light of recent forensic discoveries, these discrepancies can no longer be dismissed as mere background noise. They are now damning proof of something. Either the relatives have memories warped by the sheer trauma of those moments, which is psychologically plausible, or those contradictions are a deliberate attempt to bury the truth through omissions and twisted stories. These stories do not directly clash with official documents, but they conveniently leave out crucial details of what actually happened. Nancy's decision to check her will sits right in this limbo of contradictions. Who knew she was looking at it? Who did she tell? Did someone try to stop her from checking it? Did someone react strangely when she asked for her will? A reaction that now exposes they knew exactly what was in those papers? Or what had been done to them? These are the exact questions investigators are asking themselves as they pore over the statements they have already gathered. They are re-examining every previous interrogation under the cold lens of this new lead, searching for that one tiny detail ignored or downplayed early on, which now, 5 months later, carries the full weight of the investigation. This is where detectives focus their attention, tracing Nancy's communication history during those critical days of her review. Phone records from the days leading up to the review. Who did Nancy call? Did she speak to her lawyer? Did she argue with her relatives about the inheritance? Did she send emails or texts detailing her will, her properties, or her fears? The digital trail of her final days is not empty. She sent that final text message right after the family dinner. There was a flurry of phone activity that investigators have been painstakingly reconstructing. Her communications during this period contain critical clues that investigators are now decoding with a chilling new perspective. If she called her attorney's office to schedule an appointment, that call shows up on records down to the exact second. And if the lawyer returned her call, that connection was also permanently logged in the digital database. If she then reached out to a close friend or that post-dinner contact, pleading for help with what she was uncovering, that call is there too. The entire chain of communication tells a clear story. Nancy discovers something deeply unsettling. She contacts her lawyer. She reviews the document. She uncovers something, and immediately reaches out to someone she trusts. That secret conversation, buried deep within her digital footprint, is likely our only way of hearing. Nancy explained, in her own words, exactly what she suspected was happening. Let us be direct about what Nancy might have uncovered in that will. There are several theories, each darker than the last. In the least alarming scenario, she read the document and found it exactly as she remembered. Her assets remained intact, her beneficiaries unchanged, making the review a mere routine check with no nasty surprises. In this scenario, the review simply leads to a dead end. It would merely confirm Nancy was thinking about her estate, without shedding any light on what first sparked her suspicion. Digging deeper, Nancy reviewed the document and realized something just did not feel right. Perhaps a detail she never agreed to, a confusing clause, or a lingering doubt she wanted her attorney to clear up. In this scenario, a review demands a follow-up, a question asked, an answer delivered, a conversation saved in some file. But in the worst-case scenario, Nancy checked the paperwork and discovered a shocking error, a change in beneficiaries she never actually authorized, a clause redirecting her assets, completely ignoring her true wishes. Clear evidence of unauthorized changes, proving that someone had actively tampered with her estate plans. In this latter case, reviewing the will is no peaceful act. It is a devastating discovery triggering immediate action. Urgent phone calls, sharp confrontations, and messages to lawyers or trusted friends that leave an indelible forensic trail. Investigators suspect that Nancy's review of the will was far more alarming than a routine check. The intense focus investigators are placing on the dates, context, and messages surrounding that review suggests she uncovered something sinister, or confirmed a gut feeling that was already keeping her awake. This is where her relationship with her attorney becomes a crucial lead. The lawyers who draft and safeguard these estate documents carry strict professional and legal responsibilities. If a client calls them worried about unauthorized changes, that call gets logged. If a client asks to review their will over tampering suspicions, that request is recorded. If the paperwork was altered, or if someone tried to gain unauthorized access, that attempt, if it happened, left a paper trail in the firm's files. Reports reveal that investigators combed through the history of appointments and document requests tied to Nancy's estate. That scrutiny reached all the way to the law firm safeguarding her wills. They did not just analyze Nancy's actions, but also the firm's logs on what was sent, received, and whether anything seemed odd about that meeting. Strictly speaking, attorney-client privilege limits what investigators can actually inspect without a court order. But this shield has its limits, especially if the communication involves a crime, under the crime-fraud exception. If Nancy approached her lawyer because she suspected fraud or tampering with her inheritance, those conversations would lose the legal confidentiality that normally would have protected them. It remains unconfirmed whether police successfully accessed the lawyer's records regarding this specific review, but the trajectory of the case and the intense focus on Nancy's estate suggest that the threat looming over her financial assets remains highly active. The tense family dynamic demands a cold analysis, because this sudden will review did not happen in a vacuum. Nancy had complicated family relationships that detectives have been quietly watching for months. She had a daughter whose bank accounts reveal massive financial strain before her mysterious disappearance. People close to her were eyeing her wealth, their connections exposed in a signed folder police uncovered during a search of a relative's house. In that environment, checking her will was anything but neutral. It was an alarm bell, conscious or not, regarding the safety of her inheritance. And in a family obsessed with other people's money, Nancy's choice to check her documents would never have slipped by unnoticed. Did she tell anyone she was reviewing her will? Did she question relatives about a specific clause? Did she voice worries in conversations a relative now conveniently claims to have completely forgotten? The contradictions police discovered in the family's statements now take on a chilling significance. Recalling exactly whether Nancy mentioned that review is absolutely vital to this criminal investigation. The relatives swearing they had no idea Nancy was checking her will might be hiding an uncomfortable truth. Anyone carefully avoiding the inheritance when recounting those final days is likely trying to hide that the topic was indeed discussed. Detectives are now scrutinizing those statements through a deeply troubling new lens. Let's look at this will review within the timeline of her final days. That is where the pieces connect. We know Nancy attended a family dinner during what would be the final hours of her life. And we know that, right as it ended, she sent an unsettling text message to a trusted old friend. Her first recorded communication after that meeting was sent to someone outside the family circle. Detectives believe that specific message provides crucial context regarding her state of mind and deep fears. We now know that, in the days leading up to that dinner, she meticulously reviewed her last will and testament, re-examining the legal document that would decide the fate of her estate. That exact timeline, reviewing her will, followed by the family dinner, and then sending an immediate message to a trusted contact outside her family, reveals a woman growing deeply unsettled in the days before she vanished. There was no outright panic, no obvious distress that would prompt anyone to step in and help, just a quiet, methodical dread organizing papers, reaching out to someone she completely trusted, trying to make sense of her situation while keeping up appearances around her family. It is the profile of someone who knew something was wrong, quietly managing a dark and heavy suspicion, without raising alarms that might accelerate the plot investigators believe was already forming against her. This is the darkest implication of all. To put it bluntly, if Nancy was reviewing her will because she suspected someone was targeting her inheritance, trying to figure out what they had done or planned to do with her estate, if the text she sent after that family dinner was tied to those growing fears, confiding in a trusted friend about what she had discovered, or what she dreaded, then Nancy Guthrie may have been much closer to uncovering the truth than her family ever wanted. And getting that close, pushing so near to the reality of her situation, might have triggered the final plot against her. It is a chilling conclusion. It suggests Nancy's attempts to protect herself and document her growing suspicions were being watched by someone who stepped in to stop her before she could, that the very actions meant to ensure her safety, like double-checking her legal documents, reaching out to trusted allies and trying to make sense of what was happening, were seen by someone close to her as a direct threat. If forensics can confirm the timeline of the will, the dinner, the message, and her disappearance in that exact order, prosecutors would have an airtight criminal case and a heartbreaking one. Nancy was just trying to understand the truth. Someone made sure she never got the chance to finish. Family contradictions during this period must now be viewed through this lens. Relatives who knew Nancy was worried about her will and inheritance, or who may have spoken with her about her fears or discoveries, hold crucial information detectives desperately need. Not just what they observed in her behavior, but what she privately told them, what she shared about her financial papers, and the specific fears she began to express, and whether she implicated anyone close to her regarding the handling of her money. Those conversations, if they happened, might be referenced in phone calls or texts currently undergoing forensic examination. Relatives who discussed the estate with Nancy in her final days also left digital footprints in call logs. A call between Nancy and a relative concerning her will stands out clearly on both phone records. The conversation itself was not recorded, but the timing, the exact date, and its duration certainly were. Detectives are now analyzing these data points with intense focus, searching for suspicious contact between Nancy and her family right around the time she reviewed her will. They are tracing interactions that seemed harmless early in the investigation, but now, knowing Nancy feared for her safety, carry a much darker meaning. This is the core question, connecting every loose end in the case, arising in the simplest way possible. What did Nancy know? Not what the police know, nor what case logs reveal. What did she actually understand about her situation in those final hours? What mystery had she uncovered? What was she trying to piece together? And what would she do with that dangerous truth? Who did she confide in? What documents did she examine? What steps did she take before someone cut her short? The quiet review of her will provide a clear answer. She knew and suspected enough to double-check those legal papers. That reveals an incredibly specific level of anxiety. It means realizing her estate was in danger, and that someone close had motives to manipulate her will, that the distribution of her estate needed urgent protection right at that moment, just days before she completely vanished forever. That kind of suspicion never comes out of nowhere. Something triggered it. A tense conversation, a whispered confession, a secret document, or maybe just a passing remark she overheard. Something, in the days before she requested her will, warned Nancy to look closely at her estate planning. Finding the source of that dread, the precise trigger for that sudden review, is now the investigation's top priority, because whatever sparked that sudden fear, it reveals what Nancy knew about what they were doing. Her own secret investigation conducted in absolute silence, and without the resources of federal agents, about the danger she faced and the truth she uncovered at the end of the road. The contents of that will, and her reaction in those final days, are the keys to bridging the gap between cold forensic evidence and what a jury needs to understand to convict. At this stage of the homicide investigation, here is what the complete picture reveals. A signed document from Annie's house details financial interests and properties linked to Nancy, a legal maneuver whose exact date, detectives believe, is the key to understanding the murder motive. Just days before her sudden disappearance, Nancy demanded to see her last will, a request that investigators say was far from routine, triggered by something that deeply rattled her, perhaps leading to quiet confrontations and, without a doubt, a desperate final text message to a trusted friend. Family members offer highly conflicting stories about those crucial days. These are not just convenient lapses in memory, but direct contradictions about what Nancy said, knew, and discussed before vanishing. Forensic phone records detail the exact times and calls surrounding that critical review. The lawyer holding the papers logged the meeting, and every message Nancy sent immediately after that consultation sits in the phone logs now held by detectives. This puzzle is not missing pieces, it is nearly complete. Right now, investigators are cross-referencing every single clue with this new discovery, working tirelessly until the entire timeline becomes absolutely undeniable. Nancy Guthrie demanded to see her will just days before she vanished. She had a reason. She uncovered or confirmed something so massive that she chose to carry it in silence during her final hours, reaching out to her closest confidants, whispering her fears with the quiet caution of a highly private woman who was terrified, but not yet ready to go to the police. And then, she vanished before anyone could save her. The mystery was never about the document itself, but rather what Nancy was so terrified of finding inside, and the chilling possibility that she uncovered exactly what she feared, that those probate files confirmed her darkest suspicions in her final days, right before someone made absolutely sure she could never act on what she uncovered. Detectives already know exactly what that crucial document contained. They know when she read it, and forensic analysis of her phone reveals what she did immediately after. Now, It is up to a prosecutor to weigh the evidence and decide if this tragic story is ready to be presented to a jury. Nancy spent her final days desperately trying to decipher what they were doing to her. This investigation ensures her final efforts were not in vain.